Good morning, everybody. I'm going to call the Finance and Administration Committee of March 21st to order. Madam Clerk, can we do an electronic roll call? Or? Vote is open. Great, thank you. Any declarations of interest? Being none. Just before we start, yes. Give your request, please, Councillor Wu. There you go.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I wish to declare a conflict of interest. I have a relative that works in social services, and that would be my conflict.
Okay. We will, when we get to the report, we'll make sure we pull it out. You'll have to also fill in a form, and
Yes.
we'll work with the clerk to make sure we acknowledge it when we're doing the final report.
Okay, thank you.
Before we start, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to kind of go over the agenda today. We do have some items under administration, and we'll deal with those. Under finance, we have some items as well, and then we'll be hopefully we'll be doing a presentation, and then the correspondence. I hope we can refer all of them to the consideration of the report. We will go through the line by line business plans, not line by line, but we'll go through each business report, and that'll be the opportunity to ask questions. And then during the report, if there's any amendments or debate, we'll deal with it there. So with that, there is, let's begin. There's no statutory public meetings. There is no presentations in regards to this particular item. I missed the first item of business, which is the adoption of the minutes of the February 14th meeting. Moved by Councillor Lake, second by Councillor Lee. All those in favor? Any corrections? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Administration. First one is 7.1 is correspondence. Sorry, there is no correspondence. We'll have two reports. Durham Accessibility Advisory Committee membership appointments is report 2023A6. Do we have a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Leahy and second by Councillor Wu. Questions, comments? Being none, the recommendation is duly moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? That item is carried. Next item is Ukrainian humanitarian response in Durham. Commissioner, do you want to speak to this?
If I may. So maybe the one thing I will say, this is a report that ties into the budget document, and you can see in the budget we make reference to the fact that the region has supported the Ukrainian response in Durham to the tune of $2 million to date, and the $750,000 that's recommended in this report is also reflected in the budget documents, so they're consistent if council wishes to consider that. But on that note, then I'll turn it over to our CAO for comments particular to this issue.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. The region has been working across the GTHA with our regional and single-tier partners to address the Ukrainian situation, and I commend all staff for the tremendous work that they've done and continue to do, including with our agency partners in the community. A key recommendation in this report, however, is that we do work together to encourage the provincial and federal governments to begin recovering some of our costs or compensating regional and single-tier governments for some of their costs related to this program. At this point, we see the program going until the end of June or July, but in order for it to continue into the end of the year, we will need further commitments from the provincial and federal government. To date, they have not reimbursed any municipal costs associated with the situation.
Okay, there's a report, and then I'll get to the questions. So we'll move it for consideration. Mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Wu, second by Councillor Leahy. Question, Councillor Lee, or comment?
Thank you, Chair. Question, actually. This obviously isn't the first humanitarian crisis that the world is experiencing, especially recently with the Syrian refugee. Just on the top of my head from a few years ago, is there a regional policy that dictates a commitment of funds for these type of humanitarian issues, or will we be drafting one? Because I don't want to put the region in a position where we start being accused of why do we help one specific group and not another one.
That's a very good point. Through our diversity, equity, and inclusion unit, we are looking at how we deal with refugees and humanitarian situations. In general, I can say, though, we do work in partnership with our GTHA colleagues, and there is no discriminatory elements in it. We try to do where we can, what we need to. In most cases, there is compensation, provincially or federally. The Ukrainian situation is a bit unique at this time.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. My apologies. You did it correctly. I didn't. Councillor Wu.
Thank you, Chair Ash. And thank you for those words from the CAO about the support for the Ukrainians that are coming in. And I'd like to call them refugees, but in the report, and I guess the term that has been, they're classified as visitors. And I find that, unfortunately, that's, I guess, a classification by the federal government, is it?
Yes, that's correct.
So so they do not have, and through the chair, they would not have all the rights, I guess, if you want to say, that are afforded those that are coming in as refugees.
They will not have access to all of the public funding sources that are available through the provincial and federal government as refugees. They are, however, able to work upon their arrival, able to attend universities and educational institutions and schools. So they do have some benefits, but not the full scale of financial benefits that may be available to somebody classified as a refugee.
Right. And I thought the end result, and through the chair, as a follow-up to that, I guess as things, and who knows when it's going to settle, does this mean that these visitors will have to return? And I guess that's something beyond your scope to be able to speak to.
Yes, that would be their choice at this point. We work with our community partners to do our best to get them housed. And there are, you'll see in the report, a significant number of individuals and families have been housed and assist in getting them employed. It's generally their choice if they choose to return to their country. And I understand that some are for their own reasons.
Okay. Yeah, no, thank you very much for that. I mean, my wife and I have befriended mother and daughter in Newcastle, and we feel for them, and we ourselves personally are trying to give them as much help as possible, and certainly thank the region for their contributions in assisting them to settle in. Thank you.
Thank you. Technology is sometimes a challenge. Mayor Collier, do you have an issue and wish to speak on this item? Go ahead, Mayor Collier.
No, Chair. Just wanted to know how to indicate if we did want to speak on one of the items.
Okay,
So
well,
obviously it's a good
thank
here.
you. I'm glad it worked, and I'm told it's the talking head on the screen, so which is kind of appropriate for some of us. So there's a motion duly moved and seconded. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That item is carried. Next item is a correspondence from the city of Oshawa in regards to a decision to donate $10,000 and asking other councils to consider it, and it's before you today. Based on the motion that just passed, I'm not sure how we want to deal with this, but I'm asking for some direction. Receive for information will be in order, or or you can endorse it and give the direction to the commissioner to fine $10,000. So I'll
Move to receive.
Councillor Lee.
Move to receive.
Moved by Councillor Lee to receive from information. Second by Councillor Garant. Debate. Being none, all those in favor? Opposed? That item is carried. Thank you. Next item is 8.2. Report 2023 F7 remuneration expenses of 2022 members of Regional Council and appointees. Motion to receive would be in order, moved by Councillor Leahy, seconded by Councillor McCullough. Debate? Questions? What did I call you? Correct me? McDougall, sorry. McCullough, McDougall, close enough. Yeah, just just don't call me late for dinner. Questions? Being none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item's carried. We're moving through now to our business plan and budget review. There's a presentation from our Director of Business Planning, Commissioner of Finance, and Chief Administrative Officer. Again, there will be a presentation, and we can ask questions of the presentation, and then we'll have an opportunity to go through each of the business plans if you have specific questions in regards to individual topics. I know Chief Roller is here for his last budget meeting. That's a very happy face. Do I have to do something? Where's the turn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll get us started. And I do want to start by thanking Nancy, Nicole, and their team for the tremendous amount of work that goes into preparing this budget each year. You can see by the documents their modernization process continues. And I also want to thank all of the commissioners and their staff for the tremendous amount of work that goes into developing the annual budget. I think it began in June or July of last year, so it is quite the process. So good morning, Chair of Finance, Chair Ash, Chair Henry, and members of the committee. Nancy Taylor, Nicole Pincombe will join me this morning in presenting the 2023 business plans and budgets. The presentation will provide an overview of the 2023 business plans and budgets, highlights of the year's budget, including details of key strategic initiatives, including the proposed 2023 budget, an overview of the capital budget and 9-year capital forecast, an overview of future budget pressures for 2024, and beyond. And we will also close the presentation with property tax impacts for the 2023 budget, and we will have time for questions. Next slide, please. Thank you. The budget before you achieves a guideline of 5% approved by Council for the internal operating departments, including the local housing company, DRT, and conservation authorities. As noted in the report, Durham Regional Police Services were not able to achieve their target. The additional request above guideline from the Durham Regional Police Service represents a 0.2% on the overall levy and has been included in the proposed budget before you today. Next slide, please. The 2023 proposed budget includes significant investments that support the region's critical frontline priority services, including homelessness and housing support programs, transit services, and paramedic services. You will recall at our last meeting, we saw the new master plan for both services and police services. The 2023 proposed budget also provides for strategic investments that continue to advance the goals of the region's strategic plan and address the recovery of services as a result of COVID-19. The proposed budget also includes a 0.25% dedicated to fund anticipated operating impacts resulting from provincial Bill 23. And I will highlight these relate to operating impacts with the housing pressures, our housing targets that have been allocated to our local municipalities. There will be an increased requirement for consulting and design services related to infrastructure and funding. Which will impact both our works and finance department. Lastly, the budget responds to significant inflationary pressures that total $20.1 million or 2.6% of the regional levy. And you will have noticed this in many of the capital reports we actually started to bring through last year, that we could see the capital costs increasing in a number of areas. This report is on the agenda under Finance and Administration, and at this point, I will ask for the next slide. The region continues to utilize a variety of tools to engage with the community on the annual budget. We hosted a virtual town hall on November 24th last year to share information about the key priorities being considered as part of the 2023 business plans and budgets, and provided an opportunity for the public to provide impact. I'm very pleased to report that 14,000 residents participated in the event, either over the phone or on the region's website. In addition, staff have updated our online presence, and over the coming months, we'll continue to release new value stories and videos highlighting the positive impacts and outcomes of the investments made in 2023, and we'll be really highlighting the impacts that these will have on our residents and the community. Our Budget Spotlight publication will also be circulated to members of council to use as an additional communications tool later this spring. At this point, I'll turn it over to Nancy, who will give us the details of the 2023 proposed business plans and budgets.
Thanks, Elaine. And if I can, I would like to take another quick minute to thank Nicole and her team and Morgan, who is the manager in that area. It has been a marathon. They have worked quite literally around the clock for many, many weeks to put this together. A quick thanks as well to Christian Timperley, who is responsible for our presentations looking as elegant as they do. And the last thanks to Shannon McGregor of my admin staff, who spent countless hours fulfilling our commitment to make our documents accessible. And you can imagine how challenging that is with the type of documents that we produce. So I had to throw those thanks in there because there's been a huge amount of work behind the scenes on all those issues. So these next few slides highlight the significant investments included in the 2023 proposed budgets and for the critical service areas and council strategic plan goals. So housing and homelessness, which is the subject of this slide, their support program investments have substantially increased over prior years as this support to our community has reached crisis levels. Overall funding includes total investments of $117.3 million, which is an increase of 27.8 or 31% over last year. The regional funding has increased dramatically. We've increased from $58.5 million in 2022 to $75.5 million in 2023, or a 28% increase, and it does represent approximately 8.1% of the region's levy. In particular, homelessness, as we'll chat about, we've come from almost nothing 2 years ago to substantial support that we know will continue to be required. So that leads us specifically here just to note homelessness support programs. We are now at $6.3 million in regional funding, which is an increase of $4.9 million from last year. We've increased our at-home incentive program, which is a program that encourages our partners to develop additional housing units. We've increased that by $10 million this year, and we have increased the region's funding for rent supplements by an additional $1.1 million. So the investments in housing and homelessness go across a whole broad scope of areas, and Stella and her team have been very active in trying to make a real difference in this area. The next critical service areas are paramedic and transit services, and both have been extensively discussed, I know, both at the February Finance and Administration Committee and the Committee of the Whole. So I won't spend time doing all the details here, but it is worth noting for the investments in paramedic services that Council has increased 4 additional 12-hour shifts daily, and that requires 24 new paramedics and providing 48 hours of additional paramedic services on the road daily. The budget does include other supervisory and support staff consistent with the plan that you saw. And I think just from what Troy had referenced in the Committee of the Whole report, it's worth noting that the Advanced Care Paramedic Training Program is critical to achieve our future staffing success, because it would be a draw for paramedics to come to the region if we have the training program. So I wanted to emphasize that particular point. Paramedic services will require an ongoing increased investment at about 0.5 to 0.75% per year to implement the balance of the plan, and we'll talk about that in future issues and certainly in future budgets. On the transit side, you can note here the increase in additional transit service plan hours and the staffing required to do that. Quite a bit of excitement, of course, is procuring the 22 electric buses, and then a lot of strategic planning to support the continuous improvements that transit has planned for us. So again, transit will require an continued increase of investment of approximately 2% overall each year. It is a bit lumpy, as we explained that high-end technical accounting term last time around. So we'll have to work hard at trying to make sure that we can accommodate the fluctuations that occur there. And now I'm going to turn it over to Nicole.
Thanks, Nancy. So as Nancy mentioned, in addition to the investments in the 3 critical service areas, there's also a number of initiatives that continue to advance the achievement of the region's strategic plan. So under the goal of environmental sustainability, there's funds to continue to implement the corporate climate change master plan to achieve GHG reduction targets and a number of specific initiatives that are being advanced in 2023. They're detailed in section 3 of the report. Under the goal of economic prosperity, we continue to advance transit-oriented development opportunities in order to capitalize on the economic and community building benefits that are associated with rapid transit investments. So there's a report on tomorrow's Committee of the Whole agenda that will further explain what some of those investments are. So in addition to the budget supports, the budget supports the implementation of the region's newly adopted economic development and tourism strategy called Ready, Set, Future, a Place Blueprint for Durham. And under the goal of service excellence, 2 of the significant priorities are the modernization and expansion of the region's works depots and implementation of the multi-year enterprise My Durham 311 project that will enhance customer service delivery and provide seamless customer experiences for our residents. So there's a number of initiatives as well that are supported by the 2023 budget under the goal of social investment and community vitality. So under social investment, the proposed budget supports the implementation of the provincial and federal government's Canada-wide early learning and childcare plan, as well as the implementation of the provincial integrated employment services program. And lastly, for our health department, there's funding for the relocation of the breastfeeding clinic, as well as a creation of dedicated vaccination clinic space as well. Under the goal of community vitality, there's a number of initiatives that continue the region's expanded diversity, equity, and inclusion work, as well as investments in DRPS services, implementation of the region's cycling plan, the new Seton long-term care home, as well as investments in additional resources to support 4.2 hours of direct nursing care per average per day per resident in each of our long-term care homes. And lastly, as we've talked about already this morning, additional funding to support those arriving from the Ukraine. So in addition to those strategic investments that this budget provides for, there's also a number of base budget pressures and non-discretionary items that needed to be accommodated within the 2023 budget. And these were more significant than what we've seen in the past. And they're needed in order to maintain existing service levels for Durham residents and businesses. So inflationary pressures alone on the 2023 budget totaled about $20.1 million. In addition, there were also significant capital cost escalations that put additional pressures on our 2023 capital budget and 9-year forecast. So it's anticipated that the region will continue to face financial pressures throughout 2023 in responding to the pandemic and advancing the region's recovery plan. And the anticipated temporary fiscal impact of COVID on the region's operations in 2023 is estimated about $7.5 million. And that's based on current information that we have available. So there's 3 main service areas that are still fairly significantly impacted by the recovery from the COVID pandemic. Public health being one of those, with estimated costs of about $1.36 million in the 2023 budget. That also includes about $600,000 for catch-up costs in order to get us back on track with the childhood immunization programs, $2.9 million in costs in our long-term care homes, and about $3.2 million. million. 2 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 million. As detailed in attachment 5 to the report, the proposed budget includes the use of approximately $237 million in financing from reserves, reserve funds, gas tax, both federal, provincial, development charges. These are used to help offset and fund both capital and operating impacts. So from a capital perspective, the region owns and is responsible for the maintenance and renewal, as well as replacements of assets with an estimated value of $17.8 billion. So of these assets, about 65% or $11.5 billion pertain to water and sewer infrastructure and are funded from our water and sewer rates, with the remaining 35% being supported through our property tax budgets and include transportation facilities, fleet, and equipment. So this is a significant inventory that provides essential services, and it needs that ongoing maintenance and repair. The total value of the assets, just to put it into context, per household is approximately $73,400 per household. The 2023 capital budget is $498 million. And there is more detailed information both in attachment 4 to the report, but also in the individual budget packages for each of the department. There's detailed project listings there for both the current year as well as the 9-year forecast. The forecast itself totals $3.2 billion, with the most significant investments in road, transit, and police. In terms of financing of this plan for 2023, there's a general levy or property tax requirement of $35.8 million, reserves and reserve funds of $135.6 million, debenture financing of $129.5 million, and grants and other financing of $118.4 million. Over the forecast period, you'll see that we require $746.6 million in property tax funding, and you'll see that that increases on an annual basis throughout the course of the plan. Reserves and reserve fund financing that total $1.2 billion, debt financing of $386.2 billion, and grants and other financing of $196.3 billion. So as has been mentioned previously, the region is entering into a period of significant capital investment, and we have to creatively utilize extensively our use of reserves and reserve funds and debt in order to achieve the goals of the capital plan. So I should also mention that when we refresh the capital forecast for 2024, it will be updated to include the most recent information on Bill 23 impacts, as well as increased growth projections and the updated DC background study and bylaw that are coming this spring. So looking forward to 2024, and beyond, the 2024 budget is impacted by a number of the decisions that are being made as part of the 2023 budget. So this includes staff annualization costs for the new positions that are proposed in the 2023 budget. It is, however, critical to note that a number of these positions, approximately 70 of them, are fully funded by other levels of government. And so as a result, these positions don't have a property tax impact for 2024. There's also annualization of a number of expansions to support our police service that are deemed critical to the board, including frontline officers, forensic identification, internet child exploitation, intelligence unit, and the creation of an older adult investigative and support unit. Implementation plan for the paramedic and transit servicing and financing studies that Nancy had outlined will continue to place pressure on our future forecasts or our future budgets over the forecast period. So in addition, over the forecast, the region is going to have to respond to increasing growing population, changes in demographics, evolving community needs, and maintenance of our assets. And some of the more significant specific pressures include investment in broadband infrastructure, further impacts of Bill 23, investment to implement Council's commitment to climate change, including the implementation of the region's climate change master plan, roads and bridges forecasted needs of approximately $1.2 billion, facility expansion, in particular with respect to our depots, housing and homelessness supports, and the new long-term care home in Seton. I'll now turn it back to Nancy.
Thanks, Nicole. So these next three slides will drill down in sequence down to the property tax impact on the bill. So the total 2023 budget that's subject to approval today and ratification at council will be $2.44 billion. Of this, $508 million represents the water supply and sanitary sewer budget that was approved in December 2022, and that the balance of $1.94 million is what we call the property tax supported budget. It has various sources of financing, but it's non-water sewer user rate supported. So we refer to the whole thing as a property tax supported budget. And of that, 1.44 billion is for operating, and just shy of 500 million is for capital. So these two pie charts provide greater detail on the property tax supported portion, which is the $1.94 billion. So on the left side, you can see that the largest gross expenditure areas include social services at 37%, police at 13.8%, roads and bridges 16%, regional transit at 10%, and you can see the rest there. On the right side, and this is where we'll drill down to the next slide, the 1.94 billion property tax supported budget comes from funds from a number of areas, only 42% of which is property taxes. There's almost 26% of provincial investment, 6.4% of reserves and reserve funds, debenture proceeds of 6.7%, and those are for the new Seton long-term care home, the initial phase of the expansion and modernization of the maintenance depots, new Durham Region Transit terminals, and the 22 zero-emission transit buses that will come through the Canada Infrastructure Bank, and you see resolutions in the report to action that. And as Nicole mentioned, the budget does propose to utilize approximately $237 million from various reserves, reserve funds, gas tax, and development charges. So this slide now then takes that 42% of the budget that's funded from property taxes and breaks that component down. So again, you can see here it shifts a little bit. The police component is at 30%, followed by social services at 9.2%, et cetera, et cetera. And really the key message here, the shift in percentages from the previous slide, that reflects, for example, that social services receives significant funding from upper levels of government, so they drop down on the requirement in the sequencing for the property tax side of things. However, police, for example, receive far less, almost none or very little funding from upper levels. So that then flips them to need a larger piece of the tax levy to balance out their needs. So that's the difference between the two slides. One includes the entirety of all funding sources, and this one drills down just to that 42% property tax. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about taxation issues, which I find fascinating and interesting, and maybe a little dry to others. So I'll do my best not to get too carried away. So for 2023, our weighted assessment growth is 2.3%. That's slightly higher than 2022 at 1.95%. And we're continuing Council's direction that 0.2% of the assessment growth for 2023 that's attributable to Seton has been deferred until the operating costs relating to Seton come on stream. So that did occur partially in 2022, where the Seton paramedic funding came from. However, the big part of this growth will be required in the short term for when we open the Seton long-term care home. So we continue to track this incremental revenue and the estimates and services that will match to it, so that we can align that and minimize property tax impacts particular to this in future years. So this slide illustrates the property tax impacts of the budget on particular property types. So for the average residential property owner in Durham with the 2023 CVA of $483,000, and I'll take a pause there and say the reason why that number is low is, if you recall, our current value assessments are based on 2016. So that number has stayed the same all these years because that's what our assessment values are based on that base year. So based on that, a residential property tax bill for the region side would be just over $3,000, and that includes $153, which is the 5.2 budgetary increase before you today. For a commercial property owner with a CVA of about $500,000 back in 2016 dollars, their regional portion of their tax bill would be about 4,630, and that's about a $230 increase for that 5.2%. And for an industrial property owner with about $1 million of CVA value in 2016 dollars, the regional portion of their bill is about $12,970, and that's about $660, which is a 5.2, reflecting that 5.2. The education portion of the bill remains the same. The province sets the business education tax rates, but they were frozen at the 2021 rates. So that actually represents a reduction of about $3,500, for example, on an industrial taxpayer compared to 2020, because those rates, they received a reduction at that point, and that carries through. So that's just a note that has benefited both the commercial and industrial property taxpayers. So this is a new slide that's been incorporated this year, and the reason why we've done that, and my thanks to Fui Wong of Whitby for giving us a sample template to use. So this is a new slide we've incorporated because, as you know, many of the locals express their tax increase as a percentage of the overall bill, not just their share of the bill. So we've attempted to express this in a similar fashion so that this committee, council, and the public can understand the impact of the totality of the bill, because you just can't add the increases for each level or you'd have this astronomical number which isn't reflective of what's happening. Now, at the upper tier level, we've had to use averages across the municipalities to determine the calculation, so it is for information purposes. So what you can see here is that 5.2% increase that you're approving today on our own portion of the bill translates to about 2.7% on the total bill, because we're only about half of the bill that goes out. If you add to this, the average local increase is about 5.9%. Not everybody is finished, so that's a high level average. That represents about 2.1% of the entire bill. So ultimately, that means combined upper and lower with the average increases, you're looking at about a 4.8% increase on the entire tax bill. And I'd say we thought it was worth expressing that so that the public doesn't get confused that they take our 5.2 and add an average of 5.9 and think that we're looking at an excess of 10. It's weighted on the bill, so we are looking at about an overall average of 4.8% on property tax bills. So on the next slide, so we did have a lot of detail in the property tax study report, and there's a few things that are going on here that have quite a bit of interest. One is our work on the emergence of the new e-economy, and that's building on our 2022 collaboration with Ontario Tech University. We've now partnered with Trent University to do some statistical analysis here, and essentially we're looking at that relationship between the significant amount of things like online shopping and the reduction of footprint of retail, for example. How does that affect our tax dollar support going forward? And Chair Henry's resolution, and it supports this as well. It's part of carrying on that work. With respect to reassessment, the concern there, certainly we were supportive of the reassessment not occurring in 2020, given that we're in the worst of COVID and property values were really unusual. However, now the province is in a terrible position because it's been 7 years and the property tax shifts could be very significantly dramatic. It is entirely revenue neutral to the region and to your local municipalities, but it will not be revenue neutral to individual taxpayers. And that's going to be quite a bit of a concern. We will have quite a bit of a large education program once the province announces. Sometimes they do it in budget, so there's always a possibility that they'll announce something this week. But if not, as soon as we get that information, we will spend a significant amount of time analyzing that and educating so that people are aware of what's going to occur. And then the last piece, and I think I mentioned this when we spoke some time ago, the multi-residential ratio. In Bill 23, the province has put forward the notion that they are going to consult on reducing the multi-residential ratio. The only thing I'll mention there really is that would also cause quite a big shift in tax burden, particularly in those locals that have a predominance of multi-res, because that's going to be a big shift to your other regular residential properties. So that's something we'll have to track and monitor. And I will turn it over to Elaine to close. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nancy. So in closing, the proposed 2023 business plans and budget represents a 5.2% property tax impact, which is an increase of $153 a year for an average residential property owner. The proposed budget includes targeted investments in key strategic priority areas aligned with the region's strategic plan, provides for significant base pressures, positions the region to implement COVID-19 recovery plans, utilizes significant reserve and reserve fund financing, and balances these pressures with the need for taxpayer affordability. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you, and we're pleased to take any questions.
Thank you. I would like committee members and guests to hold their questions in regards to the business plan and budgets to the subject excerpts as we go through it. But if there are any questions in regards to the presentation before us. Councillor Leahy first.
Thank you, Chair. Just really briefly, so appreciate the presentation. So you're saying out of the presentation that 70 of the 238 positions funded by this budget are provincially funded?
That's correct. That's correct. Okay. Significantly through social services, but also some in health. Okay,
and then the 168 would be the taxpayer funded. And then I guess if we can compare that to previous years, like to me, this 238 is on the higher than average side for a number of staff hires. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say because Council has approved the transit study, the paramedic study, and of course police have significant challenges that they're grappling with. So that's why those numbers are a little higher because we're focused on those key service areas.
Yeah, no, and that's fair. Now I understand that. Now, and you also stated, just for clarity, you've had absolutely no timeline and understanding of when reassessment is going to happen yet.
We have no insight whatsoever to that.
Because that's always a challenge. And then there's one other thing, just speaking about the budget in general, and I'm just because I've spoken to a few residents about this. So, how would we respond when a resident's reading a newspaper article around CD Howe rating that we're not rated very well and high, and yet I've been here a number of years. I understand the budget piece. We have, like as you stated earlier, we have our AAA credit rating. We're well financed. We're well planned. What's the best way to respond to a resident concern? That reads a media report that says that my parents never thought I was doing a great job if I got a D. So how do I respond to that, just from your words?
Thank you for the question. And Councillor Crawford and I had a nice conversation about this as well last week on the phone. So I appreciate the opportunity to comment on it. One thing that I will say is that the focus of the report card that CD Howe issues is not the focus that the municipal finance sector has great concern over. Mm-hmm. So our concern very much so is what's before you today, which is a budget that the public can understand and see what their dollars are being spent for. If that budget was done in what they call a PSAB basis, it would not be clear on what the tax levy supports are, and there would be a lot of things included in that budget that aren't cash required, so they don't translate to that tax bill. So that's one issue of note. The other issue of note, I would say, is that from financial reporting focus, one of the reasons we got a lower mark is our financial statements were issued later in the year. And just for the information of this committee, we produce in excess of 320 reports to the province and feds for funding. And during the last couple of years with respect to COVID, our focus was on submitting all of those reports so that we could get much needed dollars to actually support our residents through COVID. Trying to get our financial statements issued on time when I think probably I might be the only one that clicks on the website to make sure that they're up and there was not a focus. So it's all about what council thinks as a priority. The last thing I'll say about it is CD Howe does this countrywide. So they're not focused on the legislation that a municipality in Ontario has to comply with, for example. So that creates a problem. And I fairly flippantly said to you that next year I'm anticipating that we will get an F because of an election year. That means that our budget couldn't come any sooner. So all they're concerned with is timing, essentially. So My very high focus is on a budget that's understandable to the public, so they understand what we're spending their money on, and having reports to the province that give us funding to help out those residents. Those are my priorities.
Yeah, and that's perfect, and I appreciate that answer because I was asked directly from a few folks about that, so I wanted to bring that question up. And again, the priority of spending on time trying to get money from other levels of government rather than publishing documents, I think, is a great one. And I do appreciate understanding the full piece of the taxpayer-supported funding because that's where the tax dollars go and where that's coming. So it is easier for residents to understand in that piece. So I appreciate that answer. Thank you very much. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Councillor McDougall. I got it right that time.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I do have a question. It's on slide 13, which contains two pie charts. One of them is it's titled Regional Property Tax Supported Budget, Gross Expenses, and then the other one is Gross Funding. When I look at the gross expenses, I don't see water and sewer on that. And on the other side, I see gross funding. So it has other pieces from provincial government, debentures, etc. I suspect that the reasoning I don't see the water and sewer is because in no part or parcel is it funded by any of the contributors on the right.
So that's correct. What I'll say to you though, the slide before this includes water sewer, and that's 2.44 billion is a total envelope in its entirety. However, the 507 million from water sewer is entirely supported by user rates, and the 1.9 billion that you see on slide 13 is entirely everything else. So we call it the property tax supported budget, notwithstanding there's a whole bunch of financing that goes there. But we to your point, very clearly segregate water sewer versus the rest of the budget so that there's no cross subsidization.
So just to clarify, so because there's no property tax subsidy into the water and sewer infrastructure.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And then I do have one other question, which is on the reassessment. You indicated that the reassessment is revenue neutral to us, but not revenue neutral to the independent or to the individuals. Will there be a phase in over time when those reassessments are done, or will it be automatically year one? This is your reassessment. Here's what you're responsible for.
So that will entirely be up to the province. Certainly, historically, they have done phase-ins. What typically happens is in year one, everybody that's entitled to a reduction would get the reduction, and they would phase in the increase over time. However, that's entirely up to how the province would choose to do it. Hopefully, they have preliminary numbers from impact, and they would look at that and give some thought to impacts. But that's entirely at the purview of the province.
Sorry, just to follow that up. If you give a reduction year one and then the others don't have their increase, how is it revenue neutral to us?
Because then we get into clawbacks there's a whole complex pathway that we follow. So it's all within taxpayers themselves, but it can be very complicated when we're trying to explain what that looks like. So I'm hoping for something simplistic, but it's a complex issue. So we'll have to see what they say. And we, Nicole, and our commitment to you is that we will certainly spend a significant time educating this committee, but also making sure that we get messages out to the public so that in as an understandable way as we possibly can.
Okay, very good. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. I see no other speakers questioners of the delegation. So we're going to move on to correspondence. It's moved by Chair Henry and seconded by Councillor Leahy that correspondence A through H inclusive be referred to report 2023 F9. Questions? Do we need a Councillor? Okay, thank you. Just before I call the question, just a note to councillors that all the correspondence from the committees, there was no changes done with the committee. So they were all approved as submitted by staff in their totality. So there's been no changes to the budget as submitted by staff at the committee level. and we'll see if that continues today. So I'm going to call the question in regards to referral of all the correspondence A through H. Moved by Henry, second by Leahy. All those in favor? Opposed? That item is carried. We're going to get into the business plans. I'm going to go through them one by one, and you can ask questions of them. There's no need for a motion of approval. That'll be done through the report itself. So the first business plans before us are the Conservation Authority's 2023 business plans and budgets. Questions in regards to the budgets of Kawartha,
I actually had a question before that because I think right now we are on page 181, correct?
we are on 9.3 business plans.
Oh, 9.3. Excuse me. I have a question for that before. Apologies.
Okay. Yeah, we're at 9.3. We're going to go through the budget plans and direct questions. I know I have you down, Councillor Lee, for a question on police, which is our next item. But is there any questions on the 5 conservation authorities and their budgets as submitted? Being done. Next one. Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. Councillor Lee, do you have a question? Okay. Mayor Roy.
Thank you very much. It's not a question. I'm just going to, as chair of CLOCA, and I'm sure for anybody else that's part of any of the other conservation authorities that while the 2023 presents in front of us, as we know that the transitioning and changing for Bill 23 and the impacts of that, the future dialogue and pressures will be more so coming forward with 2024 and what we have that CLOCA have kept within the guidelines. I think that moving forward, we really need to be cognizant of what 2024 is going to bring for our conservation authorities.
Thank you, Mayor Roy. Any other questions or comments in regards to conservation authorities? Being that, we're going to move on. Durham Regional Police, Mayor Collier, who's the chair of the police board, wants to offer some comments. I'm going to, and I know Councillor Lee, I've got you on the question list. Mayor Collier.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, everyone. Very pleased to be here this morning to represent the Police Service Board as the Finance and Administration Committee considers our 2023 budget. We also are joined with Chief Rawler, Deputy Chief Bertram, CAO McClellan, Executive Director Clancy, and Finance Director Teresa Fetter to answer any questions you might have. Chair, you've already correctly pointed out at the start of this meeting that this is Chief Rawler's last appearance before Council, and I'm not there to see his face. I'm sure he is relieved, as you said, but thank you, Chief, for being here today. The budget request before you represents a total increase of 6.09% over the approved 2022 DRPS budget, and the majority of the increase is allocated to the base budget to continue to provide services at current levels, so basically to keep the lights on. This base budget increase reflects negotiated contractual wage and benefit increases, as well as inflationary and economic pressures, including costs related to fuel, utilities, information technology, insurance, and facility maintenance. The result is a base budget increase request of 4.36% or $10.2 million. In addition to base funding, we're asking for funding for an additional 41 full-time positions to support the frontline investigative and administrative teams. The total program change increase is 1.73% or $4 million. It's important to note that despite the steady population growth in the region of Durham, the service authorized strength has remained relatively flat for almost 10 years up until 2018. And Council's support for staffing growth over the last 4 years has enabled the service to make up for lost ground during the long period for which the service no growth occurred. The board is grateful for that investment. However, it's important that these new positions continue to be added to ensure we're keeping up with the demand and the pressures confronting the DRPS. I also want to point out to the committee that among large municipal police services in Ontario, Durham ranks second lowest on the cost per capita for policing in 2021. Our region is well served by an effective and efficient police service. And I think we all know, I understand the importance of ensuring every tax dollar is respected, as do you, and spent wisely. But I also understand that our community, in order to prosper socially and economically, has to be a safe one. In order to attract people and investment to our region, we have to protect our community from property and violent crime and to pursue the highest possible levels of safety and well-being for our residents. Our police service is critical to the success of our region, and it's our collective responsibility to ensure that it's appropriately resourced. So on behalf of the board, I'm requesting this committee and regional council make the investments needed in our police. This funding will position us for high levels of community safety, and the residents of Durham Region deserve and respect. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Mr. McCullen, can you come to the mic? I know Councillor Lee has a question which I'm sure you're best able to address. Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Chair. I have a few questions ultimately, and I guess one of the first ones was if you go to page, 106 in the agenda, you go over the police service budget highlights. Each item, each point has a specific cost in parentheses afterwards. Except the last one, the third last one is additional frontline officers, which I think is actually the result of the largest increase. So, first question is for anybody watching at home, not many people, I'm sure, but how many additional frontline officers are we asking for, and what's the cost of that?
So the additional officers that will go to the front line is 20, and the cost, the first year cost is 1.1 million.
And so, as a follow-up to that, then, how many officers do we currently have on medical or stress leave right now?
We have, in terms of totality, and are you talking about currently not able to come to work, or in totality? In terms
Correct.
Okay, so approximately 60.
60.
That's correct.
So, I understand. So I was reading your strategic plan, or just the highlights of, and there's a Pillars program that was mentioned. I think that assists with this. But after that, I didn't actually see much in terms of investment of this budget ask towards any additional mental health services. Can we not be allocating some of this money for 20 new officers towards the existing 60 and getting them back to work? Can we not put that money to more mental health services, more proactively reaching out to them?
So through you, Chair, it might be helpful if you want. I can give just a little overview of what we do from a health perspective. So really 3 prongs to that approach. The first is proactive care. So we have 20 plus programs, of which over 80% of our employees engage in one of those 20 plus programs. So you don't see it in there. We've been building it since go back now to 2006 in terms of those programs, focus both on mental and physical health. The second thing is our approach to dealing with individuals that have some sort of challenge from a health perspective, and that is early identification, early intervention, and early return to work. Last year, we returned to work individuals that had some of those struggles, 95 people approximately. So we do that. And then the third piece, and it's something that was approved by the board last year, that provided additional support in terms of dealing with what is the biggest category, which is occupational stress injuries, specifically WSIB related. And that investment was about securing expert support from outside the organization in dealing with those cases to make sure our members are getting the proper support they need, the files are processed the way they should, and working with the third-party insurer, that being WSIB, to ensure they're doing what they should. I should really highlight as well, this is not a DRPS challenge. Of course, it's a policing challenge across the country, and really it's an emergency service challenge. Anybody that's a frontline worker, we're hearing and seeing that. And one of the pieces that staff do an excellent job is working with other services. So, for instance, fire services here in the region, multiple agencies are struggling as well. And so what is the better practice and how do we incorporate it? And we're constantly doing it. Right now, we have a study that we're working with a few agencies outside of the Durham region as a pilot around helping individuals around focus, specifically when you're in those frontline capacities. We just expanded our pillar program, or adjusted to go from 20 to 55 members that are there and available to support members. So we're always adjusting, evaluating how we're offering that support and evolving it.
Relative to any other, we'll call it Ontario police force, is there anything that Mississauga, Peel, York region is doing towards the support that we're not doing?
I'm sure they are. We meet consistently with those groups and share better practice. I can tell you that we just spent time with 2 services a little bigger than ourselves, sharing some of the programs that we're running. And so that is something constantly people are tweaking and trying things differently. So certainly there is, but we're extremely open always to making sure that we're incorporating those better practices if it can get us better results.
To Chair Collier's point, we are the second last in terms of ranked, and that is not a good number. So I am ultimately inclined to support this increase, and people have heard me say this ad nauseum now, I don't see a direct correlation with more frontline officers equals a decrease in crime. In fact, we increased back in 2018, and we've now seen higher levels than pre-pandemic. So, this is not so much police, but just I know, for example, Mississauga has a program where they divert a lot of the mental health cases to various agencies. Is DRPS embracing that? Because I just had lunch with Inspector Carter, who mentioned that their staff is dealing so many mental health cases that ultimately is not your it goes beyond serve and protective. This is not your area of expertise, nor should it be. Can we take that off your plate and possibly free up more staff time towards the emergencies?
I see my boss moving, so I think he'd like to start.
Thank you. That is a great question. So the answer is absolutely yes. But who's going to take it over right now? I don't think our region has the infrastructure in place. So if Durham Regional Police says, no, we're not doing that, where is that workload going to go? So and I don't think right now our region has that. So absolutely, but 1/3 of our calls, quite frankly, have nothing to do with law enforcement, but Durham Regional Police is responding to those. So if you take that was 1/3 calls away from us, absolutely, we probably could go without hiring staff for a little while. But just because Durham Regional Police is not doing it, that workload is still coming in. So until the infrastructure is in place within the region, I'm happy to continue to do that, but that's workload on our members.
Of course, and I think that speaks to a broader point that we can all be doing as we could be doing as a region is, why can't we start allocating this funds to these social services that Mississauga is seeing great results from it. They're seeing success from it, and it's a aggressive. I don't mean to say all police are aggressive. That's the wrong phrase, but just it's a more peaceful approach to a problem that we're seeing on the increase across the board. So, thank you for that answer. I see one of your points on page 236 was we're referring 25 cases to Durham Connect compared with 34 in 2019. I actually have a meeting with your Durham Connect supervisor, but just for anybody watching, could you kind of briefly outline what Durham Connect is and why we saw a decrease versus 2019?
Well, Durham Connect is a multi-sector organization. As we talked about earlier, police is not the ideal service in all cases to respond to issues that are facing our community. So whether it's social services or whether it's the CAS or healthcare, whoever the best entity is to help those in crisis, we try to divert those at the onset. So why is there a reduction? That's a good question. It depends on not all cases that come forward. We don't wait till Durham Connect is available. If we can address it sooner, we don't necessarily go to Durham Connect. So we try to leverage timeliness. So if Todd Rolauer is in crisis and Durham Connect meets on a Tuesday and it's a Wednesday, we address that right up front, and we try to connect them with the appropriate service more quickly and more. I think it's better for the member, the individual in crisis. So those aren't captured within the totality of what's going to Durham Connect. If it can wait, if it's not in a crisis, we bring those matters to Durham Connect, and as a collaborative table, we try to address that. But if somebody's in urgent need, we try and address that more quickly and not necessarily wait for Durham Connect to get together.
Okay, those are all my questions. Chief Rolauer, I've been very asking very tough questions, and you always have very, very good answers. I just want to say I appreciate your service, enjoy retirement, and to the rest of the finance committee and all the staff. I think there's an opportunity to do different things. I think we keep approaching the same methodology of we're seeing an increase in crime, more officers, and I think police is already at 34%. I think there's other ways to approach it. I think we need to take a chance. I think we have to be ambitious and set the bar, so to speak, for the way we treat policing across the province. Our police department does a great job, but he just said a third of all cases probably should be going to them, and it's going to them. So obviously, this budget cycle is not the time to really talk about this, but for future budget cycles, I hope to see this ambition going forward. Thank you again. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor Schumer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I guess this is probably a question to staff. In the business plan, the police services business plan, I think it's page 12 of 32. Under the operating revenue, there's reference to recoveries from reserve and reserve funds. Last year, we budgeted $826,000. This year we're budgeting 271,000, and according to the slide, we didn't actually even incur anything in 2022. What is in the 2020 budget? What is that marked for?
Commissioner?
So through the chair, we're just making sure that I'm referencing the same thing you are. So page 12 of 32, under the capital financing section, the reserve fund of 404.
Good. Mayor Schumer, you cut out there. Can you repeat your comment?
It's under the operating revenue, not the capital financing.
All right. And so, sorry, which one are you referring to then? You recover some reserves and reserve funds, the 826?
826 this past year, 271 this year. I'm just wondering, firstly, what the 271 is earmarked for?
So that's for the helicopter.
It's done every year, Mayor, to fund replacement. I know York introduced their new helicopter yesterday. So,
and 826 last year was also earmarked for that.
So it all depends on what's necessary for the helicopter capital. So, and I'm not sure whether the chief is in a position to comment in any detail, but essentially each budget for the helicopter, it speaks to what's needed in that particular year from a capital perspective for the helicopter upgrades and maintenance.
Chief?
I think you just captured it. It's mostly for maintenance, upgrades, and keeping it flyable. So, but yeah, I would love to get a 7.2 million helicopter like York Region did, but that's not in the budget for this year or next year.
I'm just wondering why it wouldn't make more sense to kind of even that number out each year into a dedicated reserve rather than it jumping back and forth from 826 to 271.
So through the chair, in this case, this is pulling the money out of the reserve to fund what's required for that capital maintenance in that year. We do put monies aside in a reserve for all of our particular pieces of fleet and equipment, including the helicopter, and that's fairly consistent. This is actually a draw out to offset this particular year's cost impact.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Chief, how are you?
I am great.
I just was I had a question around the budget. So, with Bill 23 looming over everyone's heads, and we don't know when that's going to start, the expectation is about 84,000 new homes will be coming to Durham Region. This ask and budget, if approved, would that cover that kind of growth in the region?
No. I think the reality is, and I'll be quite honest with you, the 20 increasing staffing will allow us to maintain the same service delivery as our residents and our councillors enjoyed last year. As we look forward, we're going to require increasing staffing. That's just the realities of where we are. As I talked about a little earlier, a third of our calls have nothing to do with law enforcement from my perspective. In fact, our top 3 calls have very little to do with law enforcement. Check on well-being calls, going to see if people are okay, really has no impact on crime severity, weighted clearance rate. Assist ambulance, love to do that. They're great colleagues, great emergency partners, but when we assist ambulance, that's our number 2 call for service that we attend. Over 5,000 a year. That really has zero impact on crime prevention, law enforcement, but we do it because it's the right thing to do. And a suspicious person. Now, from time to time, those do result in criminal, but most of the time, somebody walked down the street with a shopping cart. It's not a crime, but those are our top 3 calls for service. And I'm not going to say all the time, but high 90s, they have little impact on crime prevention. But we're called to go to those, and until there's perhaps a change on what it looks like in the future, whether it's social services doing check on well-being, whether it's fire services, right now that's falling on Durham Regional Police, and over 33 times a day we are checking on people's well-being.
And I don't disagree that we shouldn't be looking at a different way, to help you with that third of policing. But the reality is, with the increase in gun crime and the increase in just general crime overall, if you could offset that 1/3, do you have enough to cover off that kind of violent crime?
Yeah, I think the more officers we can put in guns and gangs, more officers we can put on our offender management unit. Yeah, absolutely, that will be an impact. But these 20 officers, from my perspective, will have very little impact on crime. It will allow us to maintain status quo. I don't think it's going to get worse. But when I look at, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, when we look at Durham Regional compared to other services, when we look at crime severity, weighted clearance rates, crime severity. Weighted clearance rates, overall clearance rates, we're generally in our comparative services in the top 2, 3, and 4. But when it comes to staffing, we're at the bottom. We're number 7 out of 8.
Right.
And so if we were on average with our comparative services, that's 106 officers increase. And I could pretty well guarantee if we increased the Durham region with 106 officers, there would be an impact, a positive impact on crime. We'd be able to do more. We'd be able to respond more. But I don't think there's any notion. I'm not going to pretend to be not dishonest, but not paint a picture that's positive. Just to paint that this 20 officers were able to stay status quo.
Okay, so just given the idea that Councillor Lee was speaking about around, kind of changing perspective, where does that conversation really start? Like that's a big shift, right? That's a really big shift. I'm certainly not suggesting that you don't need 20 new officers at all. I'm just saying, where does that conversation begin? How do we change that for you? How do we make your policing more effective?
Well, I think fundamentally is what do our residents want us to stop doing? What are they okay with us not providing? I think the caution I have to say is you can't just stop it one day saying this funding is going to be allocated to social services if the program's not in place. Because when we say we're going to stop doing it, we have to stop doing it because we don't have the staffing. So allocating money up front to me is not, because that work comes in. You can't expect funding from the police to go to one agency and then not staff us and expect us to still do the calls. So where does it start? I think it's a discussion between our next chief and maybe the commissioners to looking at what are we doing as a police service that is better suited elsewhere. And I think there is capacity. It's just that those are difficult discussions, but there are opportunities. We just have to start those conversations. But I think it's with the commissioners and with the next chief of police and obviously with our board to start that dialogue. But you can't just move money from one agency and expect Durham Regional Police to still do it. That infrastructure has to be in place. So that way when we say we're not going to check on well-being, when someone calls, they're being deferred to somebody else. And that agency has the capacity, whether it's at 2:00 in the morning or on a Sunday afternoon at 3:00, there's resources there to go and deal with it because
that's the difficulty, isn't it? It's not policing is round the clock, right? And so you would have to expect whatever took over that to be the exact same service, right?
Yeah, and again, soon in 10 days from now, I won't be the chief anymore. But I think I could speak on behalf of our next chief that there can't be, you can't expect both. You can't expect us to not be funded to do the job, ask us to do it and give money to another agency. Again, I'm not opposed to that. I think there's lots of opportunities. Those discussions have to start, but there has to be a commitment that it's going to be appropriately staffed because you can't defer money from the policing budget to another entity and still expect the police to still do that service.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Chair Henry.
Thank you, Chief. And again, congratulations on well-deserved retirement. You're probably the only officer that's held every position within the organization, and that's something that you can be very proud of us. We're proud of you. We've had this conversation a number of times. I just want a little bit of correction because the comment made that we didn't hire in the last 10 years is correct. We didn't hire in the last 6 years, the 6 years prior to that. But in the last 4 years, we've hired 52 officers, another 20 this year. And using forecasting tools going forward based on the population point in 2051, I think your staff annual increase for officers will be averaging 20 a year. Would that be correct?
Yes. Yep, that's correct.
So I really would like to get away from that last 6 years and talk about what's current, but that's a story for another day. Chief, there's been lots of conversation in Ottawa, and we started this conversation years ago with the Mayor of Toronto and the GTH mayors and chairs about the absolute necessary bail reform work that needs to be done in this country. Because a lot of the problems that we're having on the streets are not problems that we can fix. And has the federal government reached out to the Chief of Police Association or the Big Ten police forces to ask for comments related to the challenges that we're having within our communities and our downtown cores with homelessness, opiates, addiction, and mental health?
I know there has been discussions with the OACP and with the CACP, but those are, from my perspective, still in the initial discussions. I know there's some meetings coming up within the province, both with our provincial elected officials and the federal government. They're ongoing. I'm confident that the federal government and provincial government are hearing the voices of the chiefs of police. Just trying to narrow down on what exactly is going to be done.
Do you think they'll finish it in our lifetime? No, you don't have to answer that, but they're moving very slow. And, the sense of frustration amongst your officers when they see the same person doing the same thing in a downtown anywhere in the region of Durham, and that individual's been arrested 2, 3, 4 times, and he's back out doing the same thing, must be frustrating for you to hear and for your officers.
It's frustrating. It's frustrating that police officers in this province and in Canada are being killed by individuals that have been released. It's sad for police officers. They risk their lives each and every day. It's sad that one of our recent homicides, the perpetrator, and it's on social media, there's a background on that individual. So yes, our officers are dealing with too many individuals that are released. There are more individuals within our region living on conditions, most of which are violent, than we have police officers authorized strength.
So, Chief, with the amount of work it takes to manage the caseload of people that have been released back into the community that your officers have to watch, do the numbers that are being released back into Durham region represent that you have to manage each and every month greater than the number of officers that you have employed?
Yes. There are more individuals on release conditions that live in our region that we're responsible for to look after, whether it's federal, provincial parolees, sexual offenders. They outnumber the number of police officers we have employed with Durham Regional Police.
And it must be frustrating for you because I know that Durham Region is a leader in human trafficking, and the work that we've done with our health and social services group and policing has been recognized around the world for that great effort. But no matter how much more effort we put into it, the problem continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Is part of that problem the failure of the other levels of government that manage the laws in this country to recognize the challenges of today and realize that the world is very different than even 5 years ago?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I just stay in my swimming lane. As a chief, we just look after our job and what our role is, and what the judiciary does, what our elected officials do in terms of laws. That's over to them. We will just enforce the laws. So, I have Todd Rolauer's opinion, which I'll keep to myself, but certainly my political answer to your question is we operate within the boundaries we're allotted to in terms of arresting people, being the voice for the victim in terms of whether we think they should be released or not, and then it's over to others to make that final decision, and we will support it. And if they stay in jail, great. If we have to monitor them, we will do that.
And, Chief, I know that our social services department does great work, especially for human trafficking, and that the region's addition of the mental health nurses has helped, but it hasn't solved our problems. It's frustrating. I read an article the other day that talked about the challenges that we're having today are no longer sustainable or solvable by simply putting money on a hemorrhage or a Band-Aid on a hemorrhage. And that you can look at countries other than Canada in specific areas, and I'll reference a couple in the United States, San Francisco and Oakland, where it is now, and Seattle is another one where, if you read, have gotten completely out of control because the government's inaction to make sure that criminals are arrested when they're criminals. And it's frustrating. Chief, when you write the book and your opinion's in the book, I will read it and maybe I can use your opinion to change some of the stuff that is ongoing out there because it's sad. that we as a region, some latitude, Chair, if you would.
Go ahead, sure.
It's sad that we as a region are trying to fix the social problems of a country by putting money into situations that we cannot fix. And that the costs related to municipal budgets across this great country are not affordable for the average taxpayer anymore, but the need on the street is so great. And I'm frustrated that the government gets 50% of what most of us make, and all the HST that comes from the sale of goods, and municipal government has to work with property taxes. So we are working with the money that you have left after you've been taxed. You don't have to answer this. But as a taxpayer, do you think that's unfair?
I think he nodded his head.
And we will be raising that issue on behalf of all the men and women that work for the region of Durham and police and paramedics and with the other municipalities to try to drive a new thought process into how our federal government works. We don't see them. We don't hear from them. They're not on the street. They need to understand the challenges in our communities. And in Durham region, that's all 8 communities. And I want to thank you for your service, tolerating my rant. But I truly want to thank you for 38 years?
35 and a half.
35 and a half years.
Yep.
And if you only think back that far ago, that long ago, we were still using floppy disks. So
Yes.
have a great retirement.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor McDougall.
Thank you, Chief, for presentation and for all the hard work that you do. We certainly appreciate it all. And to follow Chair Henry's comments is and there's not much I can say after that. I do have a question in terms of the business plan. The key targets for 2023 look really good to me. The question I have is perhaps on semantics. The police force does a great job in supporting Vision Zero. Vision Zero has a 0 target for road-related deaths and injuries. In the report, it states that our 2023 goal is to maintain a 0.3 per 100,000 population or lower injury rate for pedestrians. It says in 2021 we overachieved our goal and we had 0.19 per 100,000. If the goal is 0, how do we overachieve the goal with any injuries?
How do we overachieve? Sorry.
If the goal of Vision Zero is 0
Yeah.
related injuries or deaths, it says we've overachieved the goal because we had 0.19 per 100,000 injuries or deaths. The goal is 0.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that. To be quite honest with you, I didn't create that document. And Vision Zero, we are a partner in it, so
Yeah.
we don't kind of lead it. But I think our ultimate goal is, to have 0 fatalities, 0 PI injuries. That's obviously a lofty goal. I don't think it's quite frankly achievable right now, but it's certainly a goal. But in terms of overachievement, sorry.
That's okay.
If I could have more context, or I don't know if you have. Sorry, Stania.
So the ultimate goal is, of course, no one gets hurt.
That's right.
The target that for the police service is set to say what's realistic inside the things that we have control of, which the rate you reference is below that. So we came in, it was a healthier number. It wasn't 0 because that's a utopia. In a perfect world, nobody gets hurt in those situations.
Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you, Councillor. Police Commissioner Wu, the last speaker.
Thank you, former chair of the Police Services Board. And thank you very much, Chief, and thank you very much for your service. And certainly it's an honor for me to be on the Police Services Board to see what actually the police service is, the amount of work that the men and women do day in and day out, 365 days a year. And you did that pretty well for 35 and a half years. So thank you very much. Now, if I reflect back to those 35, when you first started, let's just say, issues that we are, and again, we talked about the 20 frontline officers, but the other officers in the background that are dealing with older adult investigation. human trafficking, child exploitation. I think those are things that when you first started, and I could go on and on, that probably were not there when you first started. And if they were there, I think we always thought, that's in Toronto. That does not happen out here in Oshawa. Does not happen in Bowmanville, not in Ajax or Pickering. But it is happening. And for the, let's say those in the, I'll use the term background, but they're very, very essential. Can you give us an idea how important it is that we have all the complement just to get us up to date so that we can, I guess, serve and protect our residents? First and foremost, I think a lot of our community safety is very important. But when there is an underlying element there, and as we grow, it's happening. When you have brazen in the daylight firearms use, and that's, again, like I said, that used to be, we say Toronto. It's happening here. Can you speak about some of that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thanks for the question. And I think probably what I haven't done a great job at is recognizing our civilian members. Like, it's great to hire frontline, they're the front, they're emergency response, but every time we hire a police officer, one individuals, where there's workload that's increased on the civilian side, whether it's payroll, whether it's recruiting, whether there's work that's created. So I don't think over the last decade or so we've really had a hard look at that. So this organization wouldn't function without our civilian staff. Like, every job we have contributes, whether it's directly or indirectly, with our frontline officers and the jobs they do. CIB, cybercrime. There's so many. When I first started, and somebody asked me if I had a horse and buggy when I first started patrolling, but I know there were motor vehicles, but it's changed a lot. Technology, like I said, cybercrime. The reality is now crime doesn't have borders. When we look at theft of motor vehicles, those high-end vehicles, they're going to the ports. We're finding them in Dubai and the UK, and they're going across. Like, crime has no boundaries now, and we've had to adapt as not a police service, but as a policing profession, and the collaboration between police services, provincially, nationally, and globally, has changed significant, and we need those dedicated investigators that have that capacity and skill set to do that, and we need our civilian staff to support that. So I think in the future, and again, I'm not going to speak for Chief Moreira, but we're starting our 2024 budget discussions, and part of it has to be our civilian staff. We can't operate this organization without our civilians, and we have to look at that equally as with our frontline officers as well. So I think future budgets, I think it will be 20 staffing, but newsflash, there's going to be civilian requests as well, and probably investigators. And it's just the changing nature of crime and the complexities of crime.
And I think it had been discussed about, and again, it's frontline, whether it be police, and we have our EMS and our fire services, and whenever there's a 911 or an incident happening, you're responding, and sometimes it's, and when I say even frontline from the police, the 911 callers, the mental health of those that go there. There's the physical side, obviously, and the mental side, and I think we talked about that at the board, health and wellness, trying to work to get there, at least them physically and mentally well enough to at least come back to a point where we can accommodate. And how best are we able to accommodate as we're working through this process?
Well, and I think it starts at recruiting. So we test for resiliency. So that's part of our testing. So we try to hire individuals that have the resiliency in them. Unfortunately, obviously, with the nature of policing, whether it's sworn or civilian, from time to time we see things, and whether it's one incident or whether it's vicarious that's built over time. I think that's the reality of whether it's a nurse, a doctor, or fire, or EMS, or policing. Sometimes things become too stressful. And the CIO talked about the 21 plus programs we have within our organization that we either trying to build resiliency, we're trying to have support mechanisms in place where people, if they're not, I think we all know when we're struggling. It's just having that strength of courage to put up your hand and ask for help, and we have programs in place to do that. And then when individuals get to that breaking point where they need to be off, obviously we work with them and we're doing all we can to get them back to work. Because I think, from my perspective, the evidence is clear. The sooner you get back to work, the better your off will be. The longer you stay at home, the worse you get. So we try to get our members back, but the reality is sometimes what people deal with and what people see in first response is traumatic, and it's challenging.
Well, last thing I wanted, and through the chair, and I recognize the blue ribbon that you're wearing on your lapel, and thinking of those two officers and any officers that are, I guess, called out, and certainly domestics are probably one of the ones that you don't know what you're coming into. And again, like I say, nowadays, you just do not know what you're getting into. For me, it's unfathomable. A 16-year-old, that's the age of my youngest granddaughter, to do what had taken place. So again, for those that get the call, my thoughts are with them for every call that they get called out to. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wu. That's very appropriate, I think, shared by all members of this committee in regards to the good and important work that the men and women of the Durham Regional Police Service do each and every day. And what happened in Edmonton, it was indeed a tragedy. Chief, I know you're not the only one in the household retiring next week, so best of luck to you and Paula in your new honeydew responsibilities. I was chair of the board when I went down to your office and invited you to be the interim chief, and that was a good day for me and a good day for you. And I also was there when I asked the deputy chief to be our deputy chief too. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for your service to our community, and best of luck in retirement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But I will be back on Wednesday. I think I have my quarterly update.
Great.
Joined by Chief Moreira for that one as well. But
Great.
Thank you very much for those comments.
Appreciate
Very
that.
much
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you, folks. Let's move on. Next item is 9.3C, which is Durham Regional Transit. Any questions on transit? Mr. Holmes is ready. Okay. Next one is business plans and budgets 9.3D, health 2023, public health and paramedical services. I'm looking at my screen, so I'll move on then. 9.3E, social services, plans and budget, emergency management, social assistance, children's services, family services, housing services, long-term care and services for seniors. Questions of the budget? Mayor Schumer first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Through you, just a couple of things to confirm. Obviously, there's some sizable increases in the budget for this year, and I know that there's a number of items coming online. One would be the Beaverton Supportive Housing, and I think there was a good discussion at the committee level about it. But just to confirm, we're not bringing in the annualized costs. This budget only represents the partial year for these projects. Is that correct,
Commissioner?
So perhaps I'll answer some of these easier questions, and Stella on hold for the challenging ones. Yes, so we budgeted for a partial year, and we will pick up the totality of the difference in next year's budget. So the RFP is out there, and once all that, or is about to be out there, once all that's resolved, we'll have the exact values in.
Okay, thank you. And
does that answer your question? Sorry.
That answers that question. Yes.
Great.
With respect to the subsidy, both from the province and the federal government, and I understand, these have been going all over the place in the last few years. Of course, COVID had a place to play in that, and we're not expecting as robust funding. But these, the subsidies that we have in the budget, we're pretty confident about that, correct?
So I will refer that one to Stella. I mean, we're talking massive dollars here between the Canada Child Care benefit, between our Ontario Works new programs that are coming, between the long-term care funding for the 4 hours of nursing care. They appear to me to be pretty solid commitments, but perhaps Stella may have some additional comments.
Commissioner?
Through the chair, yes, Mayor Schumer, the early childhood, the C-Wealth program is committed. The long-term care, 4 hours of care, it's in the Act, in the Fixing Long-Term Care Act, so that's committed. Where we were looking at challenges, possibly Ontario Works, we don't know. There will be changes to our funding probably in 2024, so we are waiting to see what that new funding model looks like. Housing, our homelessness budgets, we never know with those as well. We did see a reduction with the end of the SSRF funding in 2022. So we do hope that through advocacy and continued discussions at our health and social services table, we will see increases to some of the homelessness funding that we've been getting. But those are probably the two areas, homelessness and social assistance, that I would question for future.
Okay, thank you. And I guess lastly at this point, we're bringing in 1.2 million from reserves. Is that earmarked to a specific item in this year? We didn't have anything previously.
Commissioner?
If I may, through the chair, I'm just having Nicole, our Director of Business Budgets, pull out the specific details, unless you have a page number reference for us. As you can appreciate, we've got thousands of pages of documents.
Mine's only 792. So.
16.
Mayor, you're cut out again. So could you just reiterate what page you're speaking to?
Page 16 of 72.
16 of 72.
So perhaps the one, we have a summary on attachment 5 as well of all of reserve fund draws. And for social services, we're drawing 1.2 million for the supporting homelessness. We're drawing 651 in development charges and just over 10.5 million for the Seton long-term care construction. So those.
Yeah, I was just wondering if that was earmarked for anything specific.
So yes, our draws from reserve funds are always exactly customized to most often capital programs. But yes, there's matches for what they're drawn for.
Okay. So it's going into the operating. So I'm just wondering what operating expenses that is earmarked.
So the 1.2 million is going into homelessness supports.
Okay, just in general.
We'll have to pull out yet another document for you. Hold on a second. Perhaps Stella can assist while we pull out the breakdown.
Commissioner?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair. So I can just highlight some of the areas that our homelessness funding will support in 2023. We're looking at sustaining and developing our shelter programming in Ajax and Whitby. And we're also looking to have sufficient funds in our budget for the 2023-2024 winter warming program. We are looking at having a 24/7 emergency line for homelessness. We're just working through some details there. Another big area, and it's the 1.3 won't cover all of this, but this is just some of the areas that we're looking to support, is having some expanded scattered site housing programs to help support some of the veterans who are homeless, our high chronically homeless folks with high needs, our low chronically homeless folks with low needs, and our youth. And in addition to that is additional street outreach.
Okay, so if we go, if we follow this through to 2024 and beyond, all of those items you listed off there, I would assume they're all going to continue. So this 1.2 is just kind of a cushion, because these we're going to see these projects or programs continue. And so could that mean that next year we get $1.2 million here if it's not continuing to be funded from reserves?
So, through the chair, I'll answer the first part of this. As we are working through what Stella's team assesses as really critical and important with respect to achieving success on our homelessness file, each budget year we will be looking to have to increase just because of the critical needs. So, what we balance between how much tax levy room we can manage to squeeze out and then topping up from the Operating Impact Reserve Fund, that will be our challenge each year, because the tax levy support that's there now of the 6.2 million is not going to be enough to overcome the challenges that Stella's department is facing. So that will be a decision each budget year to try to squeeze out as much as we can for ongoing, and then top it up as we need to. I'm not sure if the commissioner has anything to add particular to the details there.
Through the chair, thank you. So I'll just have to say that even for 2023, we haven't had to reduce any of our services. Thankfully, we did have an additional regional funding that came our way. We didn't get anything more from the federal government and the provincial government. Sorry, federal government, we did get a little bit more through Reaching Home, but certainly not through our homelessness prevention program. So, we do continue to work through a lot of the challenges. We are hoping to see some wonderful outcomes with this investment, particularly in helping people sustain their housing. So that is a big goal of ours this year, and we will likely have to continue to increase, though. We are coming from at a deficit. We are one of the only municipalities who never invested in our homelessness program. So we went from zero to where we are today. I do hope to see an additional investments in the next few years.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Speaking from an investment point of view, I noticed, so when you do a scan of the document, children's services comes up a lot, but typically a lot of the children's services are for younger age children, like 6 and under. Do we have any programming catered to teenagers or youth? Because ultimately, a lot of our crime we're hearing is from, youth and teenagers going into that adulthood. Isn't that an opportunity for us to tackle that from a regional level?
Commissioner, do you want to take a run at that one?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, the early learning and childcare program is exactly that, Councillor. It's for the early years. However, we do have programming through our Family Services Division supporting youth with mental health supports. We also support youth in our social assistance program through a trustee youth program where we help youth who are actually living on their own through a partnership with a trustee who works with them to help them sustain their housing, to continue their education, to remain housed, to be in good health, and goal to continue with some sort of post-education. So internally, those are some of the areas that we're focused on. And of course, our youth homelessness, we do support that area. But generally speaking, you're talking about the general population. It's really through work with the school boards, the service providers who do work with them. And we do sit at a lot of those tables and provide our support as needed. Okay. And the Children's Aid Society as well. Sorry, that's another group that we work very closely with.
That is very helpful. I think there's another opportunity for the region to possibly intervene and get involved in this kind of programming directly, but that's, again, for a future conversation. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions in regards to social services? None in my speakers list, so we'll move on. 9.3F, Planning and Economic Development Business Plan. So Planning Department, Economic Development, Tourism, and Rapid Transit-Oriented Development Office. Questions? Councillor McDougall.
McDonald, McDougall, McCullough.
What did I say?
As long as you get Mick, I'll answer.
I had it right that time, didn't I?
You did.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
I know an Ian McCullough. That's why.
That's a good name, too.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for this report. I do have a question with regards to Bill 23, and it speaks to it a bit at the beginning of the plan. It says that trying to find the spot exactly here on my computer, but it says that the impacts of Bill 23 are unknown at this time, and the planning budget is essentially held where it is from 2022. Because from what I'm hearing at the lower tier municipality, we're looking at taking on planning responsibilities that are currently housed at the region. So the question I have is will this impact the region's planning budget? I've had a bit of conversation on this, but I'd like to hear just in terms of where do I see in the budget that the line item is the same as 2022, and what do we think the impacts will be for next year and going forward? Thank you.
Commissioner Bridgman.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. So we are in the process of looking at that, waiting for the proclamation of the remaining portions of Bill 23 that, at least as far as the bill suggests, there will be some curtailing of certain regional planning responsibilities, and that's why your staff are saying you'll be taking on more things like the approval of subdivisions, condominiums, consent applications, and that sort of thing. Not that there's a lot of volume, but that was sort of what was contemplated. But we have no idea when the province may enact that into effect. So as it stands for the time being, we're going forward. To your question, though, for the 2024 budget, if in fact the province does proclaim those outstanding portions and thereby making it the case that the townships are now the approval authority for certain things, then there would be, I would say, a fairly modest trimming of the planning division budget that would sort of be in line with that approval work that we are doing at present. I don't have an exact number, but that's why I'll call it modest.
Okay, thank you. I was trying to find in the planning budget where I would see from the 2022 estimated actuals to the 2023 proposed budget, that I would see the line item carried over as the same. Perhaps it's rolled up into a greater number that I can't tell, but thank you for that.
On a macro level, the budget does have an allotment of 0.25% for the cost of Bill 23. That's in the summary document as a add-on.
Thank you.
I don't have any other speakers in regards to planning and economic development. So I'm going to move on to 9.3G, which is the Works, General Tax, and Solid Waste and Management. Questions? I don't have any requests or questions. So I'm going to move on to 9.3H, Finance and Administration, Regional Council, Regional Chair, Chief Administrative Officer, Corporate Services, 911 Finance, Corporate Items, Headquarters, Local Housing Corporation, Durham 1, and listing in fees and charges. Questions? Councilor McDougall.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a question with regards to development charges, and it's in pages 9 to 14 of the report. And my question is with regards to, I know that there's been some impacts looking forward towards development charges in terms of what will be charged in the future. Previously, the question was asked in terms of GO Transit. There's a GO Transit development charge here, which from a regional perspective, I don't think it's our charge. Is it our charge?
Commissioner?
So through the chair, a number of years back, I want to say it was around 2000, early 2000s, the province legislated that we collect GO development charges on their behalf. So the province dictates what the number is, and it gets included in the bylaws that we structure, and the locals collect that. So there is a GO Transit development charge. The province typically increases it by 3% a year. It's based on numbers that are frozen from that time. So they've not redone any work there, but they, by legislation, direct us to keep collecting it and inflating it at a regulated rate.
I'm just thinking perhaps if the province is looking at reducing development charges, perhaps we could assist them and stop collecting this charge. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Good advice.
Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
is that number reduced by 20%?
Through the chair, not at this point.
Oh,
No.
Could I make a motion to reduce it by 100%, Mr. Chair?
second. You should take that up with your MPP, perhaps.
Sorry, one further question on that.
Yeah,
if
sure.
I
Go
may.
ahead.
Just in terms of GO Transit development charges, and thinking in terms of northern transit systems in the region, realistically, when you look at Brock and Scugog, perhaps even some of the northern areas of Whitby, Oshawa, and Clarington, there's really not a lot provided by GO Transit in that area. So that might be a consideration. I know we are a region as a whole, but certainly with the reduction of the GO services in our area, I'm questioning that charge that we're levying on our system. And certainly when you look at, that's a flat fee. When you look at the cost of real estate in certain areas, it doesn't slide as a percentage of the value of the residences that are built. So just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other questions on finance and administration? I don't have any speaker requests, so that would conclude our review. We have two reports in front of us today. Can I get a mover in regards to the strategic property tax study? Moved by Councillor Leahy, second by Councillor Wu. Commissioner, do you want to introduce this topic? It's on page 45 of our agenda.
So through the chair, I think the only thing I will say is that we are keeping our ratios the same as prior years, and we are watching to see what the province does with respect to the multi-res and new multi-res ratios and the impact. The only other thing that I would speak to a little bit here is that we've also put forward our recommendations around the nuclears, because that affects both Pickering and Clarington, and so there's some details around how they're assessed and what that means for us. So we are refreshing those and bringing those recommendations forward again to enhance the criticality of those funds.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. My question is regarding page 54, the outstanding assessment disputes. If you could send me the 17 for Ajax, that'd be appreciated. But ultimately, what would they be disputing? I thought this is pretty like black and white, is it not?
So through the chair, surprisingly, it is not, and I'll give you an example without naming any names. So in the chapter 4. So the ones that are remaining after all this time from the 2016 assessment are ones that have some very complex issues on both sides of the argument, and often get a lot of deferrals because of how complex it is. They tend to bounce back in the court system processes. So.
Okay, that's helpful. And of course, that franchise is McDougall's, I imagine. All right, thank you very much.
exactly. Councillor Wu. Yeah, and thank you. And through the chair, and I think that had been mentioned a couple of times, or sort of intimated. I'm looking at page 7 of 40 on the report 2023-F-8, 4.12. And I think this Chair Henry had something to do with this. Can you give us an update on that?
Certainly through the chair. So I think it was the January Finance and Admin Committee, Chair Henry raised a motion to take a look at alternative revenue sources. In the motion, I won't reread it as it's here, but we have been working on that in a number of ways. It's still early days. We are looking at moving cooperatively with some other parties as well to gain some leverage. The CAO and I have a meeting with Enid Slack. Some of you may recall her name from the Monk School of Business and the International IMFG Municipal Finance Group. So we're looking at discussing with her because she has championed a lot of different avenues of municipal financing sources over the years. We have staff undertaking some financial analysis to determine through the provincial and federal budgets how they're allocating, what the dollar values are driving from HST, and how they're allocating them to cost centers now and what that may look like with respect to then what could be allocated from a countrywide number to a provincial number to a municipal number. So we have a number of fingers in the fire, if you will, with respect to developing that, and we'll be putting even more resources to it once we have our budget put to bed. But we have a lot of feelers out and a lot of initial work in a bunch of different areas on that.
Yeah, and I think this is I think we have to get very creative and just like the city of Toronto putting toll roads on the Don Valley, we might want to put toll roads on. Just kidding on that. The other one, you spoke about the nuclear industry and Chair Ash and myself are host communities to nuclear, Darlington Nuclear and Pickering Nuclear. Now, the 12.10 section, and that's page 23 of 40, we talked about the stranded debt. And right now, the proxy property tax are being made to the Ontario Energy Financial Corp. Now, when can we see, or do you know when this stranded debt may be retired? And can you just give me an idea, what is the quantum of the monies?
So maybe I'll give you a very high level perception of how this works. So as some of you know who are very much into nuclear, the what's called the operating island and the actual generation components of a nuclear facility are assessed at $86.11 per square meter. Has always been at that. It's never been inflated, never changed. However, the Ontario Power Generation is property tax based on the full CVA of the entirety of their facilities. And the difference between that full taxation and the $86.11 has always been diverted to pay down the old Ontario Hydro stranded debt. It's very difficult to track. Something I read a couple of years back, so my apologies for being rusty here, implied that the stranded debt had been addressed. But it's not easy to find out. And so in theory, when that stranded debt is paid off, the way the regulations sit, then it should fall like any other property, and the property taxation in their full manner would fall to the municipalities. That could be very, very significant numbers, but it's also hard to extract what the full taxation assessment is of OPG properties, because the province of Ontario is their client with respect to that assessment. We've seen traditionally the 8611 assessment, not the full CVA assessment. So there's a huge amount of work that goes on there, and certainly the CAO's office also, as you know, and Nicole was part of that, have also been doing other work around economic impacts of nuclears. But that's the crux of the matter, is the difference between full CVA assessment and this regulated rate, and where those monies are going, and right now it's to the province of Ontario.
Yeah, no, and thank you for that. And again, I appreciate your response to that. I think it's something that probably, and I don't know, that requires direction to inquire with the appropriate party or level of government to get in that, because again, that affects a lot of people within the province, and certainly for us as host nuclear communities, that's a revenue stream that would be nice to tap into.
So through the chair, what I would suggest is that certainly finance would endeavor to meet with Clarington and Pickering staff and work through the CIO's office, who has a nuclear in their portfolio, and we'll come back with some thoughts for you on what our options may be there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mayor Schumer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. The Durham and even lower tier municipalities are more and more investing in healthcare. And even during the Social Services Committee meeting, it was acknowledged by staff that this shouldn't be happening. It's not our responsibility. And just following up on the last discussion with respect to the section in the report dealing with advocacy for increased HST and gas tax funding. Can staff or the chair perhaps tell us what advocacy is going on to address the province's and the municipalities' normalization of downloading healthcare funding? We've just learned, in the last month or two, that there is substantially increased funding coming down from the federal government to the provinces. And of course, little in the way of guarantees how that will be spent, or if it'll even, quite frankly, go to healthcare. So I'm wondering, what are we doing, or what are the municipalities across the province doing to advocate for the province to get behind the funding and get it off the property tax bill? Because it is getting to the point where it's not only being normalized, but it's becoming a sizable burden.
Thank you. When you said chair, I don't think you meant me.
No,
So
sorry.
I'll let the CAO respond.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. First of all, through the various associations, mayors and regional chairs of Ontario, Ontario Big City Mayors, and AMO, we consistently send messages to the province with respect to financial pressures being placed on municipalities related to health. Within the region of Durham, we have now engaged Strategy Corp, the firm that we use for our government relations, to specifically lobby on our behalf to address issues and inequities specific to the homelessness and housing issues, which does in fact enter healthcare. Within the region, we do, as you know, fund hospital expansions and other healthcare expansions, and that is a policy that we will be reporting to council on later this year as we look at what the pressures are on our budget with a recommended go-forward strategy. So there are a number of channels that we are all working on, and again, through our various associations. That being said, we still have a ways to go. Thank you very much.
Mayor, go ahead.
I guess just to follow up on that, what's the response so far from the province? I mean, I think I know the answer to this question, but just to get it officially there, what's the response? Because it seems like there isn't much of one.
CEO?
We have not had a response specifically to healthcare. We are just starting our intergovernmental relations strategy with respect to housing and homelessness, which also involves the criminal justice system and crime prevention. So I don't have any outcomes to report at this time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for that. I've no other speakers on the list, so there's a motion duly moved in second. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That item is carried. Before we move to the final item of consideration, I'm going to call for a 10-minute recess. I know some members of council have commitments early this afternoon, so I'd like to get through the budget in a quick brief time. but we've been going at it for a couple hours now. So, motion for a 10-minute recess, moved by Councillor Leahy, second by Councillor McDougall. All those in favor? We're recessed for carried. We're recessed for 10 minutes. We're going to do an electronic roll call again. The vote is open. Thank you. We have quorum. There's one report in front of us. So what I'd like to do is get a mover and then a motion to divide. So do I have a mover? Councillor Leahy, second by Councillor Lee. There is a report which has recommendations A to EE, and the motion to divide would be on A, Roman numeral I, or one, sorry, department operations for long-term care, and that would to reflect Councillor Wu's conflict. Motion to divide, moved by Chair Henry, second by Councillor Lee. All those in favor? Opposed? That item is carried. So we have the budget document in front of us. Debate, questions, or are you going to make me look stupid and not, after a 10-minute recess, and we'll call a question? Okay. Recorded vote has been requested. Any debate, questions? Which one do we do first?
So we can do part A, the numeral 1 first.
Okay. I have nobody on the speakers list, so I'm going to call the question. The first one is the divided motion, and it's noted for the minutes that Councillor Wu has a date. We'll do that as a recorded vote. Councillor Wu, you would do conflict, which is the whitish cream. Not quite sure how I described that. Eggshell. Okay. I'm going to do the emerald green. Okay, the motion is passed 6-1 with one conflict. Okay, we'll move to the main motion. Is there any further debate, comments, questions? Being none, there's a request for a recorded vote. Councillor Wu, you are allowed to vote on this one. Vote is open. That vote is carried unanimously 8-0. So we'll go to council a week on Wednesday. There's no advisory committees, no confidential matters. Any other business? Being none, notice the date of our next meeting is April 11th. A motion to adjourn would be in order. Moved by Councillor Leahy, second by Councillor Lee. All those in favor? Opposed? Oh, before I call that, I want to point out the good work of our staff up here. This process takes literally months and months and months. Councillor Garrard mentioned that he sends emails on the weekend and he gets responses from the commissioner. He sends me texts to the wrong phone number, or he would have got a response from me. But to our staff, we are very blessed to have a very dedicated team of professionals here who are sitting among us. But special thanks to the commissioner and her team in finance for very professional, well-presented documents. So thank you for that. We are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you. Good work, ladies.